What's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Variant, the podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Arris Quinones, with Tim Connolly, as always.
What's going on, Variant Nation, everybody?
Yeah, and today we're finally breaking down the first two episodes of WandaVision, the first MCU Disney Plus series. And I gotta say, off the bat, I enjoyed it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of on the fence.
Really?
You know, we talked about it afterward, but I watched it and it was I guess not on the fence isn't the right way to say it. I enjoyed it. It was just very it was different than I expected. It was weirder than I expected. It was definitely much more focused on that kind of delusion in the first two episodes than I expected it to be. I expected to get a little bit more of a tease or a hint at what we were dealing with, what the story was, or where it was going to head than what we got. We only got like very small Easter eggs, little, tips here and there. And then, here a couple of moments of really intense, well-played moments. But they were just very small that kind of gave us a small inkling of some other things that might be going on.
Yeah, I will say I was shocked to like how much they were playing up to the whole shows of the 50s. Like the first episode was based off like Dick Van Dyke.
Oh yeah.
Like I was a little taken off guard of like the whole episode was literally just played like that. Like it was literally just Wanda and Vision in a Dick Van Dyke setting. And
it was crazy. Like Dick Van Dyke, I Love Lucy, Bewitched.
And they only pulled out of that world for like a minute in the episode when they're at the dinner table towards the end of the episode, which was a very intense moment. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers for WandaVision, so if you guys haven't watched and if you haven't seen it, we're about to talk freely about it, so be warned. But I was surprised that I thought they were going to cut kind of in and out a bit more. So that did take me a little off guard, but once the first episode finished, and then especially going into the second, I kind of got the tone and vibe of where this is going. I was like, oh no, I see why this is a series. Like they could have definitely not have done this in the movies. Feige has said it several times. Like we're gonna do things on Disney Plus that would not work, in the cinematic movie universe for these Marvel films. So so now with that in mind, I'm very curious to see where where these Disney Plus MCU series are going to go forward, because shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier and even Loki seem to be more straightforward, more like the movies where they're just going to be 40, 50 minutes. But you have like the She-Hulk show and stuff where they say that's going to almost be like a 30-minute sitcom type show, right? Where it's like a crime drama, like a lawyer, sitcom comedy show. So I feel like that's going to be kind of cool though, right?
Sure,
because now we have all the stuff. Like as long as again, like you said, going in, it could take people off guard. But if you know what you're getting into going in, like you kind of know like where WandaVision kind of sets the tone. It's like, oh, these are very much going to play into what they say they are, and it might not be as much normal quote unquote MCU as you're thinking. Although I do have a theory that I think, because we're only 2 episodes in. The third episode actually just went live on Disney Plus today because we're doing this recording this on a Friday.
Right.
But I do think by episode 4, maybe 5, little midway, it's gonna slowly take us out of this world that they're in, because we got little hints. The end of the episode shows that the people, there's someone watching them, or Wanda, in this weird pocket reality or something.
Yeah, there's something much bigger going on.
Yeah, there's definitely something at play, which we'll talk about a little more, probably give theories and stuff like that. But I'm very curious to see when they start pulling out of this, this reality, because it's going to be a slow burn, I think, which I'm all for.
Sure,
very slow burn, because people got to remember this is leading in to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So I'm wondering if this is a multiverse of madness, if you will, that she's stuck in. You know what I mean? And by
could it be
right? And by the last episode, it's like Doctor Strange pulls her out and saves her, and either Vision is somehow alive again, or maybe he's still dead. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're right back to we'll see.
Yeah.
We've been saying that a lot lately, haven't we?
Yeah, it's too early to tell with all these things, right? We're at the beginning of it all.
Especially this particular series. I mean, these first 2 episodes that we got last week were really unique in that it was, I mean, they really didn't tip their hand almost at all. We got several, small Easter eggs. Like, we saw the sword symbol a couple of times at the end of the first episode. and on the beekeeper toward the end of the second episode. So we know that Sword is involved here somehow, some way, and we're going to find that out at some point. We got, the character Catherine, or Agnes rather. We're kind of like, pretty, it's, you have to imagine that this is Agatha Harkness, right?
You would think.
Well, she's wearing the brooch that's very similar to the character. There's a lot of little things here and there that make you think, okay, this is likely going to be that character. But, we don't know that for sure. But, little things like that. I don't know if you saw the one scene where they're pouring, the wine's getting poured. And it was revealed that the label of the wine translates into House of Misery,
okay.
Which is an alluding to the House of M storyline.
Yep.
So we find out at the end of the second episode where she's pregnant, which is also a direct reference to a couple of very famous Scarlet Witch storylines. Where she basically creates and she has children with Vision and the whole thing,
which in the comics was really cool because
very cool.
You didn't find out till later. There's like, oh, she made all this up in her mind because it's like, how could a human have kids with an android?
Exactly, yeah, and it really kind of even strengthened and bolstered in my mind. Especially toward the end of the second episode where she all of a sudden is pregnant. We transform into what looks like the freaking Brady Bunch, by the way.
Right, yeah.
But when that happens, it kind of bolstered in my mind the thought of, are they going to use this series to introduce the idea and the reality of mutants and her being a mutant? And possibly are we going to, at some point, they're going to use it to introduce maybe one or two of the X-Men characters at some point to, start or to crack the door open to that side of the world we know they're going to be exploring at some point in the future. I probably not, because could you imagine if they were able to keep under wraps that they cast, let's say, a new Charles Xavier or a Magneto?
Dude, after the freaking Luke Skywalker reveal in Mandalorian, I'll believe anything. I believe they could
that's a good point, actually. Yeah, that's a really good point. A couple of things they've done, right? So, but we also got the one character, I can't remember her. I think they named her Geraldine, where there's but the character is played by Teyonah Parris. There's like this one character, I believe she's introduced in the second episode when she goes to that kind of that woman's group where they're having kind of the planning the talent show.
The snobby mean woman that they're all supposed to please.
Exactly. Right. But there's that one younger woman that she meets that she sits next to named Geraldine. And we know from casting announcements and stuff like that's that character that Teyonah Parris is actually playing Monica Rambeau.
Yes.
So we know that's Monica, the older Monica Rambeau. So it's like, okay, well, where does that come in? How did she end up in there? There's just a lot of these little Easter eggs, who's talking to her over the radio, right? And saying, can you hear me, Wanda? And all this kind of thing. Who's doing this to you? Those sort of things. Who is that? That's one of the ones that I was really wondering is like, one, who is it and how, and when will we learn who that is? So I'm kind of curious to see episode 3 to see, are we going to be getting something similar to episodes 1 and 2 where it's just really, heavily focused on the delusion, or are we going to start veering off into what's causing this? Yeah, I don't know about you. I thought those scenes, though, were because I felt like the way they played it so straight with the delusion for so long in these 2 episodes, it really lent toward the intensity of the moments where the delusion started to break free. Like when she sees the beekeeper and she just looks at it and she goes stoic and she just goes, no. And everything rewinds. Those type of scenes, I think that it really lent toward making those scenes really intense.
That's kind of what I was saying, like what I was talking about when I was saying earlier. The slow burn of this, I think, is going to be really pay off a lot because, not to keep repeating myself, but again, they played it so straight, like you were just saying, which was the only thing that was a little off guard for me. Again, I loved the first 2 episodes, but it did take me off guard because it's like, oh, like they're not acknowledging anything else really. Like they're just playing it straight. Like literally, you're just watching, Bewitched or I Love Lucy or Dick Van Dyke with Wanda and Vision. Like they don't
much so.
they don't talk about anything else. They're just in this world now, which added to the charm though too, right? It was kind of cool because.
Yeah,
I grew up watching like the Nick at Night with like, again, Bewitched, I Dream of Jeannie, I Love Lucy.
Absolutely.
Like my mom loved that stuff, so I used to naturally watch it, especially at night. I would kind of like fall asleep to it, and I love those shows. So it was kind of like a good nostalgic feeling watching them. Like it kind of just made me happy because those were like the times of old, like the good times, right, where everything was just like like super duper gang, like that.
Right.
So I really did enjoy that, but again. I am curious to see how long they play it straight. Like, will this 3rd episode that we're going to watch tonight, be played straight for the majority of the time? Or are they going to, go a little more out of it? But I kind of like them playing it straight because, like you said, when those moments hit, like in the first episode at the dinner table when Vision's boss is choking and they kind of break out of it for a second and you see it does make it so much more intense, like that Jaws moment where like Bruce the shark is coming, you know what I mean? Like you're like, what's happening? And then they go back to like the sitcom reality. Very, very cool. And then the sword thing, which is freaking nuts. That one's a big one for me because I feel like this is the, where they're kind of introducing it and then it's going to go into the bigger MCU, right? Like we might get it in Thor: Love and Thunder. We might get it in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness because they're a big deal, right? Like they're an offshoot, they're a subdivision of S.H.I.E.L.D., right? So I think like you remember that end credit scene with Nick Fury. I think it was at the end of Spider-Man: Far From Home where he was in space, right?
Yes,
I think
exactly.
I think that was him setting up S.W.O.R.D., the subdivision of S.H.I.E.L.D. in space. So and then
that was the kind of the tease, yeah.
Right. And now in this we have them hinting at S.W.O.R.D. yet again. So I think this is going to be the real launching point for them to go forward in the MCU and probably the future of S.H.I.E.L.D. for the MCU.
Yeah.
They might be focusing on S.W.O.R.D. a lot more, which people are wondering, it's a sentient world's observation and response department. So it's basically S.H.I.E.L.D. in space. That's all you really got to know. So my theory is I think we're going to see them a lot more in Thor: Love and Thunder, as we know the Guardians of the Galaxy are going to be in that movie and stuff like that. But I also have a theory. I don't know the character's name. We were just kind of talking about it, but in the 2nd episode, that blonde woman who all the women in the neighborhood are trying to like please get on the good side. Yep. I think my theory is she may be Abigail Brand, who for people who don't know, she is the director of S.W.O.R.D. in the comic books.
Right.
So, because after the first 2 episodes, we see that camera, zooming out and someone has a S.W.O.R.D. notepad and they're writing and they're watching that fuzzy TV. So I'm wondering if she's in there with them to kind of like monitor things because she's already been established as a snobby one that no one really likes, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe, but then maybe not because in that episode, she does have this little back and forth with Wanda, where she kind of seems like confused, but maybe she's just playing it off so Wanda doesn't know. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. You could really go either way with it. That's my guess. I think that would be smart to have an agent of like the corporation that's doing this in there with them to kind of monitor them. So maybe that. I don't know. There's a lot of ways they could go.
Yeah. I guess one of my biggest questions is like in regard to S.W.O.R.D. is are they responsible for the delusion or are they doing surveillance to try and rescue her from whatever the delusion is?
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that is going to have to do with who is Agnes, who are some of these other characters. When she's like you said, when she introduces her to the blonde haired character, I can't remember the character's name either. Mm-hmm. But when they introduce her, she's kind of the head of she's the queen bee of this group that kind of organizes everything in the town. And there's like these really kind of semi-intense moments where it's almost as if the characters are aware that they're in a delusion and that there's something bad happening and they kind of tip that a little bit.
Yes.
And that she is, she's scary for reasons beyond just being, a jerk. It really just, I guess it falls into like, who are these characters and what role is S.W.O.R.D. going to play? Right. Because if Nick Fury's up there, helping to put S.W.O.R.D. together, right, you have to imagine that he's not going to be looking to harm Wanda. And, So is Wanda trapped in some kind of a delusion by, let's say, similar, because again, if the character Agnes is in fact Agatha, is that mean that Mephisto's going to come into play? Right. Is he going to be playing a role in this somehow? That again, then they're pulling from multiple different storylines and kind of piecing it together to make their own hybrid. And Sword is maybe trying to rescue her. We don't know enough to, even the alluding that little Easter egg with the wine bottle in the House of M. Was that just a fun little Easter egg to toss in there and it was totally meaningless, or is it something more? You know what I mean? There's just so many different things. Her getting pregnant, right? All of these different pieces. It's like they're touching on so many different potential storylines throughout Wanda Maximoff's comic history that it's like, this is either a lot of like fun tips of the hat that are going to be within a separate storyline, or they're creating a hybrid of multiple of them. And so because there's just so many possibilities, there's just hard. You kind of already said it, but there's really no way to really say one way or another. I'm hoping in today's episode, we get a little bit more, at least, that can kind of help us start to assemble like a direction. But it's fun for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, again, there's so much they could do, and I feel like we keep talking in circles and just theorizing, because the first episodes, though really entertaining, didn't tell us much at all. Like
almost anything.
We basically just watched like old 50 style shows starring Wanda and Vision, which is kind of brilliant. Again, is why I liked it, because it was just fun. Like watching them in an I Love Lucy setting. But I do want to know, when are they going to start breaking out, and who, like, because first of all, we know we could pretty much guarantee, I would say it's safe to say, that Doctor Strange is going to make a cameo at some point in the series, right? Because it's like leading straight
That's
in.
my hope, yeah.
Right? I would imagine. Kind of like we were talking about The Mandalorian season 2, how we're like, how awesome would it be if Luke Skywalker shows up? And that's exactly what happened. So we're saying it now. How awesome would it be if Doctor Strange shows up before the series ends? Because we know it's going directly in there. But I think the thing that's got me most curious about this series is apparently this is going to set up the problem and or story for the Multiverse of Madness. But the Multiverse of Madness is... It's confusing to me, right? Because is this just going to be one aspect of it where, again, like I said earlier, this is their quote unquote Multiverse of Madness?
Right.
But we've been getting all kinds of rumors from the Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. They're saying like, Tobey Maguire is going to appear in there now. They're saying Leonardo DiCaprio is going to cameo as Spider-Man, because once upon a time, years ago, he was going to play Peter Parker / Spider-Man in a James Cameron Spider-Man movie that never happened.
Well, you mean the next Spider-Man movie, not Multiverse of Madness.
Also the Multiverse of Madness.
They're saying where did you see that? This is not confirmed. That is a rumor going around. They're saying yes. Okay, I saw the same rumor about the next Spider-Man movie. I didn't see it about that.
Yeah, I saw it reported for the Multiverse of Madness as well. It looks like, they're trying to do what the Flashpoint movie is going to do, where they're going to get all these characters and pull them in. So, but that's what I'm kind of trying to bring up. Like, this is crazy. If this all turns out to be true, like, is the next Spider-Man movie gonna closely tie into the Multiverse of Madness, or is all of it spinning out from the Multiverse of Madness? Right?
That's kind of the way it's feeling, right? And you have to wonder, because we don't know who the major villain is yet for, Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness. Yeah. Right? And so this now, just having seen the first 2 episodes of WandaVision, you fully are on like, oh yeah, this is definitely on the same train of whatever the Multiverse of Madness is going to be. Like, this is definitely, you can totally see it. You're getting the vibe, the tone that they're going to go for, especially with those small little moments that are super intense. It really like suspense thriller / horror or semi-horror, which is exactly the way they described it, by the way, when they first announced it. So you're definitely starting to get the tone that they're going for, and it is very cool and potentially really fun. I'm just wondering, are we going to see this as something that Wanda is creating, like we've seen several times in comic stories, right? Is this going to be driven by a larger villain like a Mephisto, right? And you have other characters that they're going to introduce, like possibly an Agatha, whoever that the blonde character might turn out to be. Is this going to be, and they're kind of working with him or aiding him in creating this false illusion that then is going to spin out, because Mephisto is a massive villain. If they go that route, right? Like that's a massive villain that could easily become the central focus of the Multiverse of Madness film. And Doctor Strange is dealing with him, and that it creates all kinds of, chaos. You could see that happening. Or is it going to be, again, this is something where, Wanda, is just creating these alternate realities, and they've got to go and stop her and rope her back in. And maybe that's where Sword comes in, and Doctor Strange has to get involved, and maybe we get introduced and we get our, the door gets cracked for some X-Men characters. That would, for me, I think be the coolest part, is if we get, in the middle of this, we see like them introduce their Charles Xavier. You know what I mean? I mean, that would just be wild.
No, yeah, that would be really, really awesome to see. And as much as I would love to see Mephisto in WandaVision and even Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, I do feel like, your opinion, my opinion, the popular opinion, that Agatha Harkness is probably the main villain for at least WandaVision, right? Because it makes sense on multiple levels. One, because she was, like, in the comics, a former teacher to Scarlet Witch. But two, which I think is the most interesting, because I like to theorize, rather, she was the nanny to Franklin Richards, which is the son of Reed and Sue Storm, right? So that would be awesome, because we already know we're getting a Fantastic Four movie.
Exactly
so this would not be by accident that they're freaking introducing a powerful sorceress nanny of Franklin Richards when we know we're getting a Fantastic Four movie down the line, right? But that would also, again, they don't have to stick to the comics. Just because, Agatha is in it doesn't mean she has to be Franklin's Franklin Richards nanny in the series. But I'm hopeful, because if that's the case, like you said, as we know, Franklin Richards, mutant, right? So that kind of ties back to it, where you're introducing the mutants and stuff like that, and also the Scarlet Witch in the comics, mutant. So it would all tie together. You would get your cake and eat it too. You would be tying it to the Fantastic Four, but then teasing that for the future movie to come if you introduce Franklin Richards that way. But you also get your mutants and your X-Men. So, I'm down. I am totally down for that. And that's totally something Feige would do. He definitely plays the long game. How many years did it take us to get Thanos before we actually saw him full force? Like the several teases and glimpses we would get until we actually saw him in Infinity War, like years later. So I think
that's kind of my thinking overall. You know what I mean? Is I'm kind of pulling from what they did with the first 10 years, right? Where we got teased with Thanos for, years, literally, where he just would appear periodically in some of the larger films, post-credit scenes and so forth, until he was finally fully revealed at the end of, was it a Civil War?
Oh man, there's so many movies. I don't even remember
which movie was it where, because obvious, oh no, it was not Civil War. It was Thor Ragnarok. Where he shows up, I think it was at the end of Ultron, where he goes in, he takes the gauntlet, he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
Yes, but we did see,
but he fully appears with his ship at the end of Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, but was that before? Was that no? Because we saw him before in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Because that's when he was introduced as the father of Nebula and Gamora. Remember, he was floating around.
Oh well, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, we see him like cloaked, right?
No, he's floating. He's on his throne. That was before even Josh Brolin was playing Thanos at that time, I believe. That's when they were still doing the practical makeup.
Man, I don't.
Yeah, I know it's a lot.
Remember the scene at all?
Yeah, it's a lot.
There's so much stuff I don't remember. I just remember at the end of Thor Ragnarok is when he fully shows up, like right at the very end.
Okay.
And then in Infinity War, that's obviously where Thanos' major arc begins, or at least his major role begins, I should say. But you're talking about freaking 8 years into the MCU.
No, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to keep it all straight, like all those cameos and stuff. it's nuts.
Absolutely. So it's like at this point, that's kind of what I'm pulling from, and I'm saying, okay, we get introduced to Agatha, we get her inserted, and we that's going to have ramifications of who she's tied to, possibly Fantastic Four ramifications, some of the storylines that they're teasing. Overall with Wanda, also has some X-Men potential ramifications. We've got, Monica Rambeau in here, What role is she going to play? What's the ramifications of that? There's just so many different possibilities. And then like we talked about before already, is, it's got us wondering, like, what other characters are going to pop up, known, existing MCU heroes, like a Doctor Strange, maybe even a Spider-Man, Nick Fury. What other characters are going to pop up in this series?
Oh my God.
It would be amazing.
Like dude, what if it's like a Leave It to Beaver type episode and that's like who Tom Holland plays? Oh my God.
That would be funny.
Amazing.
That would be really funny. But I think we're past that era though, because they seem to be moving forward in time with the delusion. So like at the end of the second episode, when she becomes pregnant, it turns into like the Brady Bunch, which is like the 60s, 70s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to be moving forward in time as it progresses for whatever that reason is, whether it's just a stylistic or whatever. I guess we're going to find out. But there's just so many possibilities. I'm certainly curious, and I'm like you, I'm already wondering, man, what is this going to set up for Multiverse of Madness? And if this is going to tie in that heavily to that, Falcon Winter Soldier, when we inevitably get that in March, what's that going to set up for some of these other films, and Loki and so forth, and just keep going down the line. It definitely has me already. The engines are already revved up to where it's like, man, this is going to be fun.
Oh, for sure. And just the possibilities too. Like, as you were talking, I was like kind of expanding in my mind, like the whole Franklin Richards thing, because dude,
right.
Like that would be insane. You'd basically be introducing like the most powerful character ever thus far into the MCU. Nuts. Right? Like this is he literally, his mutant power is reality warping, which makes more sense to me too. Again, in this, this whole WandaVision thing, because we're dealing with a pocket reality or pocket dimension or multiverse, whatever you want to call it. And how funny would it be if like he's the one behind it or something, or he's responsible in some way because of that, or he ends up being in the multiverse of madness, like, and then you get the mutants as well. Like there's so many things you could do with that, but it also blows the door open for the MCU, because you're like, oh, you thought like Thanos and Scarlet Witch were strong. You're talking about a kid who with a thought could change all reality. Like, you know what I mean? Like you literally see him in the comics in like the palm of his hand, like changing the multiverse. Like he's essentially like a god in that sense. Right. So if I almost wonder like what it would be like to have a character in the MCU that powerful. Like, would it even be fair? You know what I mean? Like,
and that doesn't even touch on Valeria.
No, not at all. So
who, we actually just did an episode not too long ago, where they, they've made the argument in the MCU or in Marvel Comics rather, that she's the most intelligent character in the Marvel universe potentially.
It's crazy.
So it's like, when you kick that door open, if you're scratching that surface, the possibilities it presents as, hey, this could be a route they go. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues
I feel like
at this point that they could be messing with.
I feel like that conspiracy theorist dude is looking for UFOs, who's got that map with all the red yarn string, like connecting it to each other. Because when you look at like, it laid out, because Disney, they gave us, all the logos for all the shows they have coming out on Disney Plus for the next few years, which is, I believe it was like, what, 17 or something like that? Something stupid and ridiculous.
A lot.
When you count all the movies.
Too many.
And you look at all that, you're like, okay. So if they're doing an Armor Wars, okay, if they're introducing Ironheart, if they're giving us Fantastic Four, if we're getting Moon Knight, this could mean this, and that could mean that, and this could go there. You know what I mean? So you kind of, being a fan, you kind of piece what they could do knowing the comics. You're like, okay, so they've done this storylines with that character, they've interacted here, so they could possibly do this, but maybe a little different, because they always got to change it a little bit. So, so I'm just like... It's just we say it all the time. It's such a good time to be a freaking comic book fan or a nerd right now. Like this is the golden age, and it's pretty great.
It's pretty amazing. And I also want to say that the conspiracy theorist board, that's a solid reference, bro. Because that is absolutely what this is like at this point. In the early stages, you're just like, oh, there's so many possibilities.
Dude, man, it would be so cool to sit in on those meetings, like just like as a fan, like just being able to watch like Feige and the rest of the creatives, the directors, producers just map out like what they're gonna do, and then just see them even like, talk about it, right? Like Feige's like, okay, I want to do this, but then when he sits down with the producers or some of the directors, are like, but what if we do this? And he's like, oh, that is really cool, and just kind of see all the creation flow out and organically. I would love. what they should do is like record a docuseries, like the making of the next phase of MCU, right? Like take this next 10 years or whatever, however long this next phase is going to be, document the entire thing, all the meetings of them going, thinking of the ideas, how this is going to connect to this, what end credit scene is going to connect to this, where the end goal is, and then release that junk on Disney Plus as like a 6-hour miniseries, episodic. You know what I mean?
Right.
That would be amazing, right?
That would be fun.
I would love that.
I mean, it falls into the category of like, man, what can't they do with what they've set up?
I know. Yeah.
They've have so much in the pipeline right now, and they've got so much in the works as far as in the near term, just things that are going to be dropping in 2021. We've been doing our schedule meetings and going over the content that we're going to be looking at and going over and bringing to you guys over the past couple of weeks here. And it's just there have been several times where you and I have stopped and gone, oh my God, how are we going to do all this?
So much.
Like, this is so much stuff. And just in the first 6 months of this year, I mean, just the comics alone, we're like, dude, we're going to have to really summarize here because there's just too much. And that didn't even touch on, once we get into March, that's when the television movies, they're just start hitting rapid fire starting in March. And it's just like, we say all the time, golden age of geekdom, man, is in full swing.
Yeah. And I feel like it just keeps coming because, like you said, we've talked about all this stuff when we were in awe and like trying to squeeze stuff in, seeing like, well, okay, this is more significant, so we have to take that out and put this there. But just more stuff, because just a few days ago, they released the new trailer for Superman and Lois on CW. So it's just like another thing. So it's like at some point, there's only so many days in a week. So you kind of have to weed out, or like, well, obviously, like, the Black Widow movie is going to be more significant than like the CW Superman Lois show. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's a lot of stuff, but it's awesome because we're always going to have stuff to talk about.
Oh, without question. I mean, we're always going to have stuff to talk about, and then some. There's overflow. Yeah, it's so much stuff. To the point to where the Superman and Lois commercial came out. Or trailer, not commercial. The trailer came out and I just went right past it. It just went.
Did you
right
watch
past
it?
me, man? It's just like it's just oversaturation. At some point I'm like, there's not enough time in the day.
So wait, did you not watch it's like a minute teaser?
I have not seen it yet. I know, I'm aware of it. I know it's there. Dude, it took me Tom Holland's new movie, the Cherry.
Looks so good.
The trailer was out for like a week before I even saw that.
Oh my
and
gosh.
That looks amazing. That's the Russo brothers directed that.
Yeah, no, that new Tom Holland movie Cherry, like you just said, looks amazing. But
it does. It looks really good, and he looks he looks really good in it. It's such a good just an extension to kind of show what he can really do, because we've been seeing him as Spider-Man for for the last few years. So like this is such a great way for him to go out and stretch his legs in terms of his acting chops, which I'm looking forward to.
He was great in that Netflix movie. I forget, with Robert Pattinson, Batman, nonetheless.
I know what you're talking about, but I haven't seen it.
Oh my gosh. I know there's going to be people listening and be like, it's this. Yeah. Anyway, go on Netflix, search Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson. It's a drama. It's a really good movie. Really, really good. But yeah, just to push the point, like you were saying, he is a tremendous actor all the way around. He is a good actor. Like, he could do that.
Yeah, if you've ever seen the movie The Impossible, he's really young in it. That deals with the tsunami over in, I believe is the Philippines. He was excellent in that. Very young.
He was young.
This is pre Spider-Man.
Yeah. It's awesome. I feel like he's, with the career choices he's making and him just being incredibly likable, he's definitely gonna, if he continues on this path, he could very well, in years to come, reach that Leo Tom Hanks status on this current path.
Well, the thing about him that I find interesting, and I wonder how it's gonna kind of play out over his career, is he's so young looking and sounding. Like he can play, like he's what, 24? Is he?
Yeah, he's like
23, 24, right?
There, yeah.
But he can still play a teenager without a problem. Right? Like he can easily play Peter Parker as a teenager and no one would even bat an eye. He just is a very young looking and sounding guy. And he's obviously, that's going to start, he'll mature and stuff like that. But I just wonder, like, as he goes on to try and do other roles, even like this role in Cherry, it's hard not to look at him and see just a young kid, Peter Parker and that sort of a thing. So I'll be very curious to see how that plays as his career unfolds. But he's a super fun, likable guy, exactly as you just said. And I look forward to seeing him do a lot more.
Yeah, The Devil All the Time. That's the name of the movie on Netflix that he's in.
Oh yeah.
The Devil. Amazing. And in that movie too, I will say, you were just saying like, he looks very young and all that stuff. But have you seen Devil All the Time? Did you watch it?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
Well, I'm not going to spoil it, but in that movie, there's some scenes where he does some things. He's let's say he's the complete opposite of Peter Parker. He's a very tough, brutal guy at times, and you believe it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
No, yeah. It's a really good movie, and again, it's starring Spider-Man and Pattinson. Because
I'll have to check it out.
Robert Pattinson, he plays like a Southern preacher in it, and it's great. It's great. It just makes me all the more happy that I'm like, yes, there's Batman. He's just such a good actor that I'm like, you could play, a Bruce Wayne, a creepy guy, anyone. I just believe you.
Well, we'll see how that unfolds as Batman.
Yes,
because I know Robert Pattinson just again as an actor has evolved and grown tremendously over the last 5 years or so. Yeah, from his Twilight years to where he's become and the things that you could tell he intentionally took on some projects that really stretched him and helped him to grow, and it paid dividends. And man, from what we've seen from the Batman so far, it looks like we're going to reap the rewards of those efforts.
For sure.
I'm excited about that. Well,
apparently from interviews, the Twilight movies were like his paycheck, essentially to allow him to do all the movies he actually wanted to do. You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
So
makes sense.
Yep.
Smart too.
And it's like coming like, how full circle is that too, right? Like you do this hugely successful like franchise Twilight, which was we don't like it and a lot of people don't like it, but like for that genre, like it was insane, right? Like incredibly popular to do that, and then do a lot of like indies, like I said, building up his chops, and then come all the way full circle getting probably the most significant role in film you could get, which would be Batman. I mean, how much more iconic than Batman can you get? So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I think that for me, I don't know where it falls for you, but even with all just the mountains of content that we have coming, the Batman still ranks in my probably top 2 most anticipated here in the next couple of years.
After that teaser, dude, like, I don't even, that is, dude, something.
I'm telling you, that teaser that we got, it blew me away. I was just not expecting that. I knew it was going to look good. I knew, Matt Reeves is an incredible writer and filmmaker. I knew we were going to get a good story, but I was just not prepared for how cool the tone is, the look, the feel of it. And I've said it here on the show, and you and I have talked about it privately. I was very much up in the air when it came to Robert Pattinson as Batman. I was like, I can kind of see it, but I'm just not sure. I'm just going to wait and see. And man, I was like, dude, Robert Pattinson for the win.
Dude, yeah, I just keep replaying that scene where like he beats that guy into the ground.
Yes, sir.
He's just punching and punching. Like, and it's such a cool like you kind of see like both versions of Batman, because you got the Ben Affleck Batman who does something similar in that warehouse fight scene in BVS where he gets on top of a guy and it's just like a gorilla pounding on someone. It's just like brute force. But here in the Pattinson beatdown, as I'm going to call it, it's like just this super Muay Thai MMA fighter who's in his prime, just like with the reflexes of a freaking cheetah, just beating someone. So you got. Well,
also it had like the tone of it. It had more of a rage to it.
It did, like he was more, but it made sense because he's fresh off of his parents being killed, right? He's still really young,
exactly.
So he's got that anger is really fresh in him. Which, oh man, I can't wait. I can't wait. And Paul Dano as Riddler seems amazing. This movie.
Yeah, my body is ready for that one.
I'm curious to see if that one's going to be, I know that's not coming out this year, but we don't know what's going on in the world for this year and next year. So I'm curious to see if they'll hold that one purely for theaters, or if things are still crazy, they'll release it on HBO Max as well.
By then, I mean, you're talking about fall of 2022.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that whatever the new strategy is going to be, that's going to be fully in place by then.
Yeah.
By probably a good 6 months. So if if we've moved fully into the norm is people put things on streaming and, the limited theaters that we have at the same time, then I think we'll already be well established there. If theaters manage to survive to some degree and they're still just releasing in theaters first, and then maybe like 30 days or 60 days later it's on streaming, I think we'll be well established there as well. So whatever the new normal is going to be, I think that's going to be well established by the time that drops.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know we got to move on and talk about some future state stuff a little bit, but I did want to bring up one tiny little topic before we start talking about some DC future state. Did you see the new Godzilla vs. Kong poster that they just released?
I did.
How?
The one with Kong in the city?
Yes, and freaking Godzilla coming out, like swimming, coming out of the water like a giant crocodile. Dude,
freaking.
This, and then we even got the brief clip of it from like an HBO Max sizzle reel. But
yeah, it's almost even like a snapshot.
Right. Yeah, it's super, super quick. But this movie, because they bumped it up 2 months. We're getting it in March, I believe, and we're getting the first trailer for it this Sunday. So by the time people listen to this podcast, the trailer should be out. But dude, I cannot wait, because you know I'm there's like besides comic books, there's like 3 or 4 other things that I really, really love. Like Power Rangers would be one, Star Wars would be another one, and then freaking kaiju, freaking giant monsters fighting each other. So I cannot wait to see Godzilla.
But I don't know about you, but the size of Kong,
which is great,
in that poster, holy crap.
Which is initially threw me off, because as we all know, classic King Kong isn't not remotely that tall. But in the Solo Kong movie, they explained that, the older he gets, the taller he's perpetually growing. Like, he's always going to grow until, like, I guess he eventually dies. So it makes sense. So that just means he's a lot older in this movie, because he's bigger than he was even in his Kong Solo movie. So
boy, you have grown.
Yeah, you've been eating your Wheaties.
You've been packing away the protein.
But dude, because the movie's they're gonna fight, but then ultimately at the end, they're gonna team up to fight a bigger threat. So I would assume that's, what's gonna happen. So I just can't wait to see what other kaiju and or gigantic monsters they bring in, because in the last Godzilla movie we got Rodan, Mothra, Ghidorah. I love it. I'm loving this monsterverse. I'm just such a fan of big monsters beating the crap out of each other.
Likewise, it's just so fun. It's just mindless fun.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of classic mindless fun too. It goes back to the golden age of cinema and films and stuff like that, monster films. So it looks like a ton of fun. I love how they're marketing it, right? Kong versus Godzilla, one will fall.
Yeah.
It's just so fun to see these two just brutalize each other. It's going to be a blast to watch. So good. But I do think it's interesting that they bumped it to March, right? And which we also know is when we're supposed to get, at least anyway, the Snyder Cut release, and which we're also supposed to be getting a trailer for here very, very soon, along with the release date at the end of the trailer.
Can't wait.
So yeah, I'm very curious, like how they're going to line these two things up, because, we recently also found out that it's no longer a 4 1-hour episodes. It's actually going to be a 4-hour film, 1 4-hour movie released all at once. So those changes happen. Zack Snyder just kind of dropped that bomb very quietly.
Yeah, on Vero, like the social media platform
on Vero,
he uses.
And it's like a few people caught it and then it just went everywhere. But I'm just so curious as to how Warner Brothers is going to roll this out. These big movies, these are tentpole films that they're just dropping just one right after the other. And relatively speaking to what we're used to, there's just not coming with the type of marketing, right, that we're used to, because they're doing theaters and streaming, but their focus is really trying to bolster HBO Max. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of wild to see, because these films are so big. I mean, these are big budget, tentpole films that we're seeing released in such a non-traditional and weird way. So like, I'm curious to see how they roll, particularly Kong Godzilla, out alongside the Snyder Cut, which is also and had been hyped up as being a huge event for them on HBO Max.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I am very curious. I know the official release date for Godzilla vs. Kong is March 26th, so the end of March. So maybe, the Snyder Cut kicks it off, which would be dope, because I'd imagine you'd have to have at least 2 weeks separation, right? So
yeah, I would definitely imagine, yeah.
So that, for us Justice League Snyder fans, that could be good. That literally kicks off March, and then they cap it off with Kong. That's a good month. If that's the case, if you kick it off with the 4-hour Snyder cut of Justice League and then end it with Kong vs. Godzilla, or Godzilla vs. Kong rather, dude, that's a good month.
Yeah, I have to imagine. I mean, because it sounds like we're getting both regardless in March. So March is definitely going to be a fun month in terms of brand new movies, because no matter how you slice it, at most they're going to be separated by a 3-week period.
Dude,
right?
I can't wait.
So, especially because they actually already gave us the date for Kong Godzilla, which is the 26th. So we know that the earliest, or the biggest separation would be 3 weeks. And that would be with them placing Snyder Cut right at the beginning, the open of March.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was just saying. So pretty crazy.
Did you see that they're estimating that the budget for the Snyder Cut, by the way, to be around $70 million?
Additional to what?
Additional.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Wow.
So remember that time where we did an episode and we said, hey guys, if they're going to do this is going to require tens of millions of dollars for them to finish. Remember that? And everybody was like, you don't know what you're talking about.
It's done.
It's a finished
cut. Dude, but that's interesting because that would put that movie at what? Close to the 200 mil mark?
No, that would put that movie close to 300 million.
Wait, how much was the original Justice? What was the original?
The original, because remember, they shot the whole film.
Oh, that's right.
Because then they went back and they shot they reshot half the film.
So that means
so that movie, that budget for that film, they have not released exact numbers, but it's estimated to be well over 200 million.
But that's right, because originally they had Snyder shot it with his budget. Then he left due to obviously this horrible family situation. Then they had to reshoot pretty much most of it with Whedon. So then he got, I guess, more money, and then now an additional 70 on top of that. So this movie has been shot like 3 different times, kind of.
Pretty much, yeah. So to be fair, they're basically treating it like a brand new movie.
You have to when you're pouring all that much money into it and stuff, and apparently how different it really is going to be. I mean, it kind of is.
And in so doing, the fan, or likewise, I should say, the fan base is too. Like everyone's acting and looking at this basically like a brand new film, that they would just go see, like they would any other new film that was coming out. So, that's probably the way the Warner Brothers is looking at it. It's like, hey, it's a win-win. What we talked about at the beginning is like, hey, if this goes on HBO Max, that could make a lot of sense. It's a win-win for them. It's basically a brand new film in a sense, and it'll bolster.
They're banking on making a lot of money off of signups and stuff if they're willing to throw an additional 70 mil for reshoots.
Right.
So
yeah, certainly they clearly believe the market is there for it to be a very positive impact in terms of signups on HBO Max.
I'm gonna watch that junk freaking first. That's gonna be an event. It's one of those things where I almost feel like kind of like the finale of any big series and stuff or anything like that important, like the finale of like The Mandalorian or anything people are expecting or been waiting for a long time. I feel like this even more so because the Snyder Cut has been something that's been talked about literally since the Justice League first premiered in theaters, Whedon's version, right? So I feel like I'm going to have to watch this first thing in the morning. Like that's going to have to be a thing. Because I swear, if it's been we've gone this many years talking about it, to it finally getting announced that it's being made and Snyder actually finish it, and something gets spoiled for me, I am going to be so beyond livid. Like now, given Snyder has told us lots of stuff already, like Martian Manhunter's in it, Darkseid's in it, all these freaking people are in it. Iris West is back in it. So if that's all the stuff he's telling us, I'm like, what are you keeping a secret? Like you got to be holding something back, right? So it's literally I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna sit my butt on the couch for 4 hours. That's what's gonna happen.
Sheesh, man. I tell you, and I say that with all sincerity, I really hope that he's holding a lot back, because if we watch this and it's just everything we already know, and it's just like, oh, okay, that was cool. It's just going to be like, well, why? Because again, I vocalized that concern how many times, right? Was that you're showing too much. We already know a lot, and you just keep releasing things. Don't tell us everything before we see your cut. That was my concern the entire time where they were kind of on the campaign of release the Snyder Cut was, I get what you're trying to do, but don't show everything in the event that it actually happens, man, for God's sake. So I'm hoping that that's not the case and that there's actually a ton of stuff in there that we just, that shocks us and surprises us in a very pleasant way.
Very, very curious. But from one DC topic to another, DC Future State.
Yeah. And kind of in the same vein, we hope it surprises us in a pleasant way.
Yeah, but now that it's out, we've read several of the issues. Now, to be fair, I've read The Dark Detective, The Next Batman. What else? Geez. Oh my gosh.
Justice League.
Justice League. I have yet to read The Flash and the Teen Titans issues, which I really do want to read. So I've only read like 3 or 4 titles thus far because there's a lot, and keeping up with like all the other titles I'm liking, like Venom, King in Black, Deceased. Those are like the 3 or 4 that I've read. And thus far, I'm very, I said it on the main, our main YouTube channel for Variant. I'm kind of like in the middle, overall, I'm just like, okay, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that's blown me away, but at the same time, there's nothing that I'm like, that's the absolute worst thing in the world, It's just kind of like, it's just kind of like one of those things. I think it's unfortunately going to come and then just go, you know what I mean? Where I kind of pin it to like the Convergence event from DC from years ago, where that event was literally like they kind of threw it together because they were in a transition stage. That's when DC was moving their headquarters from New York to California. So they're like, they kind of needed something as a buffer publishing wise to kind of just fill up 2 months. So they came up with Convergence. And I kind of feel like that's what Future State is, because remember, Future State, wasn't initially Future State, at least the way we know it. Rumor, again, we don't work for DC or anything like that, but if any of our sources and stuff or other things we heard, it was originally supposed to be 5G because they were supposed to go through a whole different direction, but then Warner Brothers, AT&T started doing lots of layoffs. DC Collectibles came to an end. I believe they've gone to 2 or 3 different rounds of layoffs within DC, which is unfortunate, which ultimately led to a bunch of publishing changes, and then 5G turning into Future State. So again, I feel like it's it's like Convergence all over again, where it's one of those things where they initially had this idea of they wanted to set something up and do this new era of DC, but for X, Y, and Z reasons couldn't. So they had to condense it to a 2-month event and then see from there where it's going to go, in the future. You know what I mean? So
sure.
Again, now we're not even halfway through, so I don't want to give like a final opinion. But as of the few titles I've read thus far, I'm like, all right. What it is for me is, I said it's in the Variant episode. I think when we were talking about the Next Batman issue 2, we're like,
yeah, and you're okay. I thought you were gonna mention your salty rant.
Yeah, no. I mean that's a completely different topic. But it's just these characters that they're introducing, like they're just going out the gate with it, right? Like they're not establishing them. They're just like, this is the new, like, and I get it. It's Future State. They're just supposed to give us a glimpse of the future of like, however many years in the future, Tim Fox is,
or so we think.
So we think, right?
Theoretically.
Yeah. However many years in the future, Tim Fox is now Batman. However many, years Yara Flor is Wonder Woman. But, and then they just hit the ground running, giving us a story. But like, because of that, I personally am not like attached to the characters. Like it's like when they're going through, when Batman's like tracking down these 2 killers or doing X, Y, and Z, it's like, okay, but I'm not invested because I don't know anything about this character. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, I think a lot of people would agree.
It's the whole, why do I care?
Right.
routine.
So it's not anything against Tim Fox's Batman per se. It's just, I know nothing about you. Why do I care that you're doing this stuff? You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think for the few issues I read thus far, that's kind of where I'm falling, where it's like the stories are, but it would mean more to me, or I'd care more if I knew, and if it was a character that like I already knew and cared about, like if it was Dick Grayson as Batman, it's like, oh yeah, I know your history, so I know what it took you to get here. Or I think Damian Wayne actually would have been really smart, because like with Superman, they did Jonathan Kent, Superman's son, naturally his son took over the father's mantle. So I thought it would have been, smart to have Damian take over his father's mantle, especially since John Kent and Damian Wayne were the whole super sons, and they've been pushing like, hey, one day we're going to be, what our dads are. So I thought that would have just been a cool dynamic, because then you could have even had like a team book of them when they're older. But, but I don't know. Long story short, I'm just like, yeah, I'm writing it out because we're not even halfway through as the time of doing this. So, I always like to say I'm not going to give a final opinion. And plus, I know a lot of people worked hard on this and stuff like that. It was like,
sure,
people are super excited to, be writing Batman or the new Flash comic book or Aquaman. So I know, they're not purposely trying to tell a bad story. So I don't want to, crap on anyone. It's just, it's not that I don't like it either. It's just I'm kind of right now. I just don't know, Tim.
Here we are, right back to we'll see.
That's what I'm saying. It's just because, like we said earlier, we're in the middle. Because again, at the time of doing this podcast, like the next Batman, it's 2 issues in. Dark Detective is only 1 issue in. Justice League is only 1 issue in. So it's too early to tell. But initial thoughts for me personally is okay. It's like, all right. There's some cool ideas, but again, I don't know these characters yet. So maybe by the end I'll care, but I don't know. I will say though, the ones that do follow the legacy characters like Dark Detective, which follows Bruce Wayne now, broken on the run from the Magistrate, and then the Nightwing series and stuff like that. Those are more interesting. But again, it's because I've known these characters for years. So I'm like, oh, what's happening to them now? Because this and this, because, in Joker War, Batman lost all of his money. So yeah, now we get to see how Bruce is handling being broke. But again, all that stuff was established. All these new characters, they're not, they're just there. So I'm like, okay, but there's nothing for me to care yet. So we got to ride it out.
Yeah. Goodness, man, this whole journey that we've been on with DC, right? It's just been something of a whirlwind. We talked about in the last podcast, our thoughts on the wrap up of the death metal event, and now even we talked a little bit about the beginnings of the future state event, and I basically right in the same vein. I don't know if I'm just getting fatigued by it all, right, or I just feel fatigued by it all, because again, it just feels a little bit directionless, and that is kind of wearing on me. We're supposed to kind of like what you're saying, where it's like, I'm supposed to care about these characters, but why? And they're just dropping, you ranted on the show, that your salty rant about how they're inserting all of these, this person's the greatest detective now. And then this person actually saved the new Batman actually saved Gotham when nobody else could, including Bruce Wayne. They're just, and this isn't the first time in comics we've seen this over the last few years. The last decade or so, where they just insert these characters. They don't give us any kind of buildup. They don't, elaborate on the character or give the character a good period of time in comics with, storylines and moments that define why this character has taken the reins of being the most whatever of their particular skill set. We've been seeing a lot of that over the last decade in comics, and this is kind of just feels like this is the latest ring of some of that, where they're just trying to create these things to fit very specific, in some cases political agendas, whatever. And it's like, okay, that's fine. That's what storytelling is for. You tell your story, and that's great. Go for it. But when it comes to like the organic nature of storytelling in terms of how it is adopted by an audience, reader, fan base, there are certain principles that you need to abide by, because if you don't, you're going to lose the reader, you're going to lose the audience, and they're just not going to be interested, and it becomes tiresome, right? And we talked about it a little bit in the last episode, even the broad scope problem of, continuing to do all of this ambiguous stuff and set up new things without fully resolving in any kind of a satisfying way other things you'd already set up, or other stories that you'd already started, or discontinuing those stories halfway through. It just becomes tiresome after a while. I used the example of Lost, to make that point of, at some point you start to just wear down the audience, whereas you just start feeling like, I don't care. I don't care anymore. You lost me. And, I guess for me, I'm kind of feeling a little bit of that, maybe just overall, and that's affecting my approach to Future State. Again, like you said, it's not bad. Justice League #1 is written by our boy, Josh Williamson. you know, and it's definitely not bad. It's got some, you know, interesting setups and teases in there. You know, they revealed that the ultraviolet lantern core, you know, it's survived and is still present, and you know, little things like that.
The massive reveal, the Hyper Clan. He brought back the Hyper Clan.
Brought back the Hyper Clan.
Pretty crazy.
Yeah, and all of the, you know, the new Justice League characters, none of them are bad. They're all like fine. It's just, you know,
we don't know them yet.
We'll see.
There's nothing.
But I guess you know why. This is why it bothers me though, and this is, I would be much more like, oh, this is just, you know, lighthearted about it in the sense of like, oh, this is just one issue in. You know, you can't say anything. You know, it was a fun first issue, and we'll see where it goes. It's the whole title is 2 issues long. You know what I'm saying? That means we have 1 issue left.
We're halfway through.
And it's like, yeah, how much can you tell me with 1 more issue, right? And when this is done, we're going to be heading into, you know, this new batch of the Infinite Frontier and all this kind of stuff, and you're going to be introducing something else. It's like, it's just starting to feel tiresome. You know what I mean? Of trying to keep up, like, what are you doing? What is this for? You know, okay, you're setting this up just to create or to let us know that there's going to be an Elseworld, you know, DC universe that's going to be operating in conjunction with what we're the DC universe that we're used to and the characters that we're used to, just so everybody knows, so that you can explore, I don't know, different storylines with these new different characters. And that just, for me, that just kind of, again, it's storytelling, so it's like, who cares? It's something for everybody, I guess, but it just feels a bit cumbersome. You know what I'm saying? Like, it feels heavy-handed and like too much for no reason.
Yeah, it's...
Am I crazy with that? Am I making sense?
It's just, you know, I think comic fans, specifically DC fans, are just kind of tired because there's been so many reboots within the last like decade, right?
For sure.
Like, so it's just been over and over where, you know, you have the New 52, then you got DC Rebirth, then you got DC Universe, then, you know, just like all this stuff. Now we're going into Infinite Frontier. So we've had like 4 to 5 reboots within a decade. And it's just like every time you think they're going to fix something or they're on the verge of fixing it and making it right again. Like for me, that was, I say it all the time, but that was Doomsday Clock issue 12. Jeff Johns like course corrected everything. You know, you had everything where you had like your legacy characters, but you had it set up where you're, you know, open for a bunch of new characters where everyone could have their cake and eat it too. But again, stuff was going on internally with DC and AT&T. Had to course correct, which led to like Death Metal being a Crisis event, and then now Future State, and now that's going to go into Infinite Frontier. So it's just a lot. I think us comic book fans, specifically DC fans, are just kind of tired right now. We want something stable. You know, it's like a relationship. We want a stable, steady relationship. We don't want it to be
exactly
in flux
right
all the time. And that's kind of what's been happening for a while now. And then it's just like little things, right? Like you were saying about my salty rant in our Justice League episode, where it's like I just said, my problem is, you know, I just don't feel these characters, you know, by themselves aren't necessarily bad. Like they've done nothing, you know, to be like, oh, you're a horrible character. It's just, I don't know enough. You're not an established character. I don't care. It's like watching any movie, TV show, or whatever, you know, form of fiction. You know, you have to get to a point with that character to where you can't just like kill a character off the bat and expect you to care, or do something huge with the character.
Yeah.
You have to, you know, have some time with them through the first and, you know, second act. So by the third act, you care, right? When the big thing happens, a death or something like that, a big reveal. But with this, like, we're not there yet. Again, we're only like 1 to 2 issues in with a lot of this stuff. But with the Justice League one in particular, that one, like you said, kind of got to me because, one, it's 2 issues long. So how much more can you tell? But out the gate in that issue, they declared that the new Green Lantern is the best detective in the DC multiverse, and that the new Batman, it did what no other Batman before him could do, truly save Gotham, which, you know, being a diehard DC fan, I know like new readers and stuff, people who are just jumping on this character, onto these comic books may not care. But for people like me and people who listen to the podcast and you who've been grown up with these characters and love them so much, it's like, how can you say that? You can't say that. You can't say that a character like that's been around for like roughly a year, or another character that's only been Batman for like a month in real world time, did what all these other characters who've had decades of stories couldn't. You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know, to the fans who love these characters, it's like, how? But how? How is that literally possible? For why? Like, how would you how would you even know that? They haven't been in that mantle long enough. You know what I mean? So it's like, especially with the Green Lantern one, it's like, what did this character do for you to justify that she's a better detective than freaking the Flash, Bruce Wayne, Mr. Terrific, who's
I've got the answer for you. Because they said so. The end.
But it's I don't know. It's just crazy because you got the world's greatest detective, Batman, Mr. Terrific, who's like the smartest man on earth, and then the Flash, whose Batman's even said rivals him because his brain works so fast. Because like the Flash isn't, his legs just aren't fast. Everything about him works incredibly fast at the speed of light and or faster. So because of that, he could, he's a great thinker. He's a great detective. So I don't know. It just feels like. Now, if this character was around for a while and that we've had a few story arcs or some major story arc that showed that, they earned it, fine. I just don't like when it's just like one line of dialogue. Like, it's like this character is more powerful than Superman. And then that's it. It's like, but why? Why is this character more powerful than Superman? You know what I mean? Just because? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, and that's a general rule, right? That is a general principle. You're not unique or alone in that sentiment that, just as a reader, a fan, just someone watching a story of any kind who's familiar with a character that filled a specific role or whatever, and then something comes along and just usurps it, you're just like, okay, well, why? And unless you build that up to give a proper explanation for that, just from a mental standpoint, your brain just doesn't rectify that. It's just like, well, no, that's dumb. You're just going to see it as dumb. And in this case, like it's hard not to see that and go, no, I'm sorry. No, you didn't earn that. That's garbage. You're just inserting that for whatever reason. And it makes no sense.
Yeah. What's a good example of this that just popped in my head? When Batman in the comic said to himself that Tim Drake is a better detective than him.
Yes. Right.
Like but it made sense because one, you have Batman he's literally known as the Dark Knight. And what else? The world's greatest detective. Like that's literally one of his nicknames. The Dark Knight, Cape Crusader, the world's greatest detective. Ra's al Ghul, out of respect for him, literally calls him detective. Doesn't even call him Batman, not Bruce, detective. So someone, Batman, already established that he's an amazing detective, saying that Tim Drake is the best detective. That backs it up right there. But also, Tim Drake has been around for a while and is proven time and time again in the comics why he's such a good detective. Like he's literally figured out that Batman was Bruce Wayne before he was even Robin and all that stuff. Like there were several stories and things that happened from his freaking origin that showed how, smart this kid is and how good of a detective he will be in the future. And that's what I'm saying. Like we've had so many stories. So I'm completely fine with you saying like, this character is powerful. This character is super smart. Or this character did what this character couldn't.
Sure.
But you have to tell me why. So now, with that said, if they go back and with this first year of like, Infinite Frontier, and they do go back and explain that, and it's justified, sure. But as of now, I'm like, I'm like, eh. You know what I mean? For now, I'm like, nay.
Yeah. And look, to be 100% fair, this is not the first time we've said this either. We've said this on numerous occasions. We've said this about when we did our top 10 most intelligent characters in both Marvel and DC universes, right? We said it about Valeria Richards. We said it about Moon Girl. It's like, look, you don't just introduce characters randomly, just arbitrarily announce that, oh no, they're the new smartest, most powerful, greatest detective, whatever it is, over characters that are well established for many decades, some of them, and just expect the fan base to go, oh, okay, yeah, this is the new person now. So forget everything we know over the last our entire life of reading these characters. It's just not a thing, and that may sound petty or trite or fanboying or whatever you want to name it. But really, in reality, it's just a matter of storytelling. Just like your analogy you just gave of Tim Drake. Tim Drake was around for a really long time. There's a myriad of storylines that explain why Batman said that when he said it, and evidence to back it up. The character Batman did not even need to explain why he was saying it, because the audience and fans who had already been reading these stories for a long time already had that backup, those stories, those instances built up in their reservoir to where they just were like, yeah, that's awesome. You know what I mean? So it's the same principle applies. It's a storytelling principle. And I just am not, there's so many different things that you could say. Is like, I don't know why they're doing certain things that they're doing, directionally or whatever. But, whatever the reason is, no matter how you try and spin it, no matter, what arguments you throw at it, you're just going to get the same result when you try to defy just common sense principles of good storytelling. You're just going to see that over and over and over again. And that is exactly what we've seen, by the way, in both the Marvel and the DC universes over the last decade or two, as they've tried to do really abrupt things. The fans have rejected it. And it's not just regarding, making a character the greatest or the smartest or the most powerful. It's been in numerous different areas, right? And that includes in like reboots of universes and so forth. You've seen the fan base reject these things outright because of the abrupt, not seemingly to the fans, nonsensical nature of them, where they just go, no, that's dumb. That doesn't make sense. Why would you do that? Because this character is known for this, or this team is known for this or that or the other thing. Why would you just do it this way? And you've gotten a lot of where various creators and even in some cases executives of some of the major publishers have mocked and made fun of fans for it and stuff like that. And okay, that's again, that's in their right to do that. But, no matter how you try to spin it, there are just certain things that fans are looking for in terms of a consistency, a continuity of behaviors with characters that they have been long established, and that's not going to change.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's just, again, like, feel like going in circles, but like you were just saying, I was saying before that, sure, just give us, the stories or reasoning to like, back that up, right? And they like do it over time because going back to the Tim Drake analogy, like freaking Dick Grayson even acknowledged that like, hey, Tim would be a better Batman than me. You know what I mean? And even when Batman said that Tim would be a better detective, he said it in a way where like, yeah, he's a better detective, but they did it in a way where, here, I actually looked it up because I wanted to get the quote exactly right. He's describing each Robin, right? He says, Jason just saw Robin as a game. It's probably what got him killed. But Tim, I have to hand it to the boy. He wants to be the world's greatest detective. And from what I've seen so far, he will someday. Basically saying when he's older, he will be the world's greatest detective. He will surpass me. Right. Like, so they're doing it where they're grooming him, right? It's like, so it makes even more sense where he's like, maybe not right now, but his skills, again, like are so good as Robin that when he gets older, he's gonna be a better detective than Bruce. And I'm like, it's totally believable. It's like, yeah, because it's earned. Because he's even saying like, as he gets older, like in real life, as you get older, you become smarter, wiser, more experienced, you become better. So, and mixed with his natural skill, he'll be better than Bruce. So,
and note what he says there, right? Note how he says it. He says, from what I've seen, you know what I'm saying? That he's directly referencing the instances and the evidence that has been presented, not just to the character Batman, but to the fans, to the audience, the reader, of why Batman is saying this. And so the reader, the fans, were able to readily accept what Batman was saying and even take it as like, wow, that's a really cool, step forward for this particular character, because the audience was already prepped.
Yes. It's like it's one of those things where we praise it so much on this podcast, but like what makes the Mandalorian work so well, right? Where it always goes back to the Mandalorian.
Back to Mandalorian.
But like no, just because their storytelling, like Filoni and Favreau storytelling, just they set things up and establish things and it with great payoffs. Like you just don't do things. You set it up and then you pay it off later. And I think, like you said, it tells to the bigger, things. And again, I don't know where they're going with Infinite Frontier, like if they are going to explain all this stuff, like I said earlier, if they do, awesome, that'll be great. But as of now, we don't have that, so, and that's all we could really go off of. But I will say, as far as future state continuity, because we talked about this in the last podcast, where we don't really know where it's going, where it's ultimately going to end. We're that's a little bit clear now. It's sort of kind of with because we're getting an Infinite Frontier issue 0. which is going to establish that. We actually have a quote that I want to read here from Josh Williamson, our boy yet again, who's doing this issue. And he says as follows, Infinite Frontier issue 0. It really feels like the beginning of a new era for DC Comics, at a time when anything is possible. We're taking the aftermath of Dark Knight's death metal and combining it with the best things we love as storytellers about the DC universe, resulting in bold, fun, and exciting new directions. There are a lot of teases to new storylines, surprises, and mysteries for the year set up in Infinite Frontier issue 0 that you won't want to miss. So, that's his official quote, but the article on DC's official website does say that this is going to set up the new era for DC. So for all of us wanting to know how is it all gonna, mesh together with, the Tim Fox Batman, Bruce Wayne Batman, the new Flash, the old Flash, this apparently is going to set up the new status quo. To what extent? Obviously, we don't know. We won't know that until we read it. But this is going to be the start. It kind of feels like this is going to be what Jeff Johns' Rebirth one-shot was, but for Infinite Frontier.
Okay. I'm just like, okay. Whatever. Like, we've been told this so many times.
I love your.
I mean, I'm just so like worn out. I really, it's like, cool. So this is literally the fourth story arc, major, story direction that DC has gone in like 2 years, where they're like, no, this is going to give us the beginnings of a brand new era of the DC universe. It's like, bro, shut up. Just do it or don't.
I love how jaded you are.
Like,
you're like, even.
I'm so over it. It's like crap or get off the pot. You know what I mean? It's like my parents used to tell me when I was a kid.
Hey, Tim, guess what?
It's like,
guess what? We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. We'll see. No, I get it. Like, I am totally in to check out whatever new stories and stuff like that and see. But it's like, man, whatever you're going to do, for crying out loud, just do it already. Like, whatever the new direction is, just do it.
I really do think the issue is they kind of don't know exactly. This is all speculation, on my part. Sure. But I just feel like, we've used this analogy before where you kind of just put things out there, see what's successful, and then use that going forward. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I don't know. Again, I feel like that's the we'll see and I don't know is the theme of today's podcast. It's like, because we don't have much to go off of right now, right? So I'm curious to see at the end of Future State what our final thoughts are. And then that'll be, I guess, around the time where that Infinite Frontier issue 0 drops, and be talking about that on the main channel.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know.
I guess this topic has been exhausted.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to be super positive here at the end. And I'm just so jaded by the whole thing. It's just like,
I will say,
but yeah, I will wait. I will wait patiently and see how the Future State wraps up and how the Infinite Frontier kicks off. In the meantime, I'll also be enjoying King in Black. So there you go.
Yeah, King in Black is that is trucking along very nicely. Issue 3 just dropped here recently, and Mama Pajama.
So good.
Dude, just I almost feel bad saying it because it's like, we get it, Arris. You like Donny Cates' writing, but it's so good.
But it's deserved.
It's so good.
It's so deserved. And quite frankly, I feel like I needed King in Black number 3 to kind of like help me through what's going on with DC. It's because it's just, DC is kind of like this plotting. We're not sure. We'll see. And meanwhile, Donny Cates is just bringing the heat over at Marvel, and they're doing some really cool stuff with the King in Black event. It's just been a ton of fun, and seeing the most powerful Thor we've ever gotten go head to head with this amazing new character Null, and how that ended with King in Black number 3, just crap tons of fun.
Who yet again, to go back, why it works so well? Null's been teased for freaking like 2 to 3 years now.
Right.
Like, he was introduced and he was teased at the very beginning of Donny Cates' Venom run, and it's been this slow.
Yeah, they pulled a Thanos.
Yeah, it's been this slow build where even last year during Absolute Carnage and that huge event, it was all really leading to this, where they're like, yeah, but the King in Black is coming to Earth. Like that, this was their, you know, the comics version of Endgame, where this is, because you have all the Avengers are fighting Null. Like literally Null has the Earth covered in symbiotes where there's like no hope. Even in issue 3, spoilers, freaking Thor isn't even able to pull out the wind. They need more reinforcements than the most powerful, you know, hero arguably in Marvel Comics right now. So it's good. Just, if you guys haven't read it, do it. If also you can watch our videos on the first 3 issues on our main variant channel. It's amazing. I love it. Tim loves it. It's good.
Well worth the read and the follow, like, of the entire story run, really, because you've also got all the tie-ins with Venom and then all these one-shots that are coming out. One of the ones that I'm really looking forward to and that we're going to be covering on the channel is the one-shot for Black Panther, where symbiotes invite Wakanda.
Like I mean, that's I love how like that title wrote itself, idea. Right? Like that's clearly going to be the title.
The idea itself is just so cool.
It's like, because you just see that title, symbiotes invade Wakanda. Who's not going to want to read that or click that? You know what I mean?
Right. I read the title, I read the synopsis, and I was just like, "Oh, okay. When does this come out?" Yeah,
dude, I want to see that live action. Actually,
for real. Yeah, that's one of the things I think that's so cool about the King in Black event to this point is there's so many elements of it that you could see, like, man, this would be amazing live action, right? That you would love to see them adopt and bring into the MCU, especially some of the new characters like a Null. Dude, right? Even though, I mean, they're insanely powerful.
You know, I went on a rant on that weeks ago about bringing Null into the MCU. That would, I think, if you would ask me what one single character you'd want them to introduce into the MCU, even above all the legacy characters that we haven't seen in the MCU yet, for pure cool factor and just an awesome bad guy, someone who could top Thanos, Null. No.
Yeah.
I
mean, he's literally, especially after what we saw in issue number 3, he's one of the most powerful villains we've seen introduced, particularly to the Marvel cinema or comic universe in a very long time.
If you know, again, if that issue is any indication how he handled Thor, because Thor, you know, if you guys have been reading Donny Cates' Thor run, he freaking soloed Galactus and the Black Winter. But then in issue 3 of King in Black, Null was able to defeat and take down Thor. So that means that Null is more powerful than Galactus, Thor, and the Black Winter. So it's like, did he just create like the most powerful villain in the Marvel universe? I guess we'll see by the end of the book.
Yeah, you can easily make that argument already.
It's pretty crazy.
So it's really fun. Really, really fun. So as we said, if you haven't started reading the King in Black storyline, we definitely recommend. You don't have to read all of the spin-offs and the one-shots necessarily to follow along with the main story of the King in Black title, but it is well worth a read.
You know what I'm curious about? Because you remember in the Thor title, again, this is spoilers, guys, for Thor and Venom. If you haven't been reading it, spoilers. But remember, I forget exactly what issue. I believe it was issue 4 or 5 of Thor. The big tease at the end was Thor looking at the future, right? Where before he defeated the Black Winter, or before the Black Winter, you know, with his one last dying breath, if you will, the one last ash of the Black Winter, it showed Thor a glimpse of the future, like what's going to end him. And it was the freaking Marvel zombies and Thanos holding Thor's hammer with the Infinity Stones imbued inside of him. So the Infinity Hammer, if you will. So when are we going to see that? Because you don't drop a tease like that. Is that going to be incorporated? Is that the next big story arc after King in Black? Is that the end of King in Black? Like, that is massive. Like, that is an event all in itself. You're saying that Thor is going to battle all the Marvel zombie universe, freaking Thanos with the Infinity Hammer, and his son's gauntlet on his other hand. What, bro? What?
And even beyond that, I would say just knowing Donny Cates, he doesn't set up stuff like that and then not, you know, conclude and fulfill, you know, finish it out. He's never done that. I would not expect him to do that on this. It's too big. It was too big of a setup for him not to show how does that come to fruition.
It's one of the coolest pages I've seen drawn in comics. I mean, it's like an amazing, like, 2-page spread. It's great.
Without a doubt. So fun. It's hard not to praise what they're doing. Even the dialogue, man. The Donny Cates dialogue in every one of these books, but for me, particularly the Thor title and now the King in Black run has just been so good. So fantastic.
It's got that like fantasy Lord of the Rings epicness to it, you know, where lines were like echoing chaos in the darkness of the world. You know what I mean? Like that kind of like that very like, you know, it has presence to it, the way he writes, you know, his dialogue. It's very good.
Yes. It has a depth, a seriousness to it that it just so, and that's right up my alley with the fantasy stuff. So he's clicking on all cylinders for
sure.
me.
So I think we've said it like a few times already. Read King in Black, guys. Read it. It's really good.
Especially if you need a break from the we'll see of what's going on in DC.
But on that note, I think that concludes today's podcast.
Yeah, I think we covered enough ground today. And you know, I think it's only fitting that we wrap everything up with like, with all of these things that we've talked about, we'll see.
We shall see. I'm very curious going back to WandaVision though, if we're going to get any teases, because I know it's already out. People have already watched it, but you're not going to get our thoughts on it until next week. So we'll talk.
Yeah, next week. You and I will be texting back and forth here in a couple of hours. Did you see it?
Dude, the only thing that's annoying is that they're so short, because I'm used to like the Mandalorian, like, you know, around 40-ish minute episodes. These are like 29 minutes of actual content, 25 minutes. So
yeah, even the first, they gave us 2 episodes, which by the way, thank God they did give us, right? Could you imagine if they had just given us that first one?
Something.
That would have been really frustrating. So it was good. Yeah, it was good that they gave us the 2, but even with the 2, it still felt short somehow. And maybe it was just because they didn't give us that much. It was a lot of tease. So we'll see how episode 3 plays out. I'll be excited to see as this unfolds.
For sure. But with that said, guys, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.